Welcome to the Westminster Tradition, a podcast with lessons for the public service. My name is Alison Lloyd-Wright, Managing Director of the Good Trouble Group, and joining me today on Ghana land, as always, are my two fellow recovering public servants, Caroline Crozer-Barlow.
Hello, Alison.
And Managing Director of Good Government Advisory, Danielle Elston.
Hello, Alison.
Well, in its first year, the Albanese government here in Australia invested $10 million in the Australian Centre for Evaluation in Treasury. Incidentally, we're very excited that in our third episode, we'll be interviewing Eleanor Williams, the head of the centre. As Assistant Minister Dr. Andrew Lee said, this means knowing what works and what can work better. But here's the thing, a lot of the hardest problems that government face involve genuine uncertainty. And yet the machinery of government, the business case, the program logic, the audit process, not to mention my own personal beef, the program management systems that we use, project management systems that we use, are built around the assumption that complex problems have solutions. This three-part series sort of comes at this contradiction by thinking about evaluation in government services. We want to explore what government thinks it needs from evidence and what evidence can actually be delivered. So we're going to start with a case study of the gold standard of evidence in policy circles, the randomised control trial. Caroline has found us a particularly strange example tackling the question...
Shocked, I tell you.
Will culling populations of wild badgers in the UK stop them passing on TB to cows?
More hand washing, more weird things. There's badgers, there's cows, there's communicable diseases. Like, I don't know what is wrong with you at the moment.
I'm curious if we get to the cobras at all, but we'll see where we go. In 1997, those evidence-loving progressives, Tony Blair's New Labour, committed to a randomised control trial to answer the question once and for all. The trial cost £49 million, ran for 9 years, and produced a definitive answer, which didn't settle anything. We want to know why. So, Caroline, a rabbit hole about cow diseases is particularly Caroline-coded. Take us away.
Look, I want to start by being clear that I am not, and this series isn't, anti-RCT, randomised control trial, despite the slightly mad story that is about to unfold. In fact, I love an RCT. The Australian Centre for Evaluation has a great paper on them and points out at how helpful they've been in debunking popular but wrong assumptions, my favourite of which is those dolls they give teenage girls to stop them from getting pregnant. Anyway, there's a good RCT that says that those don't in fact work. So there you go.
Well, they turn out to love their dolls and think this is a great way.
They just have no impact on teen pregnancy one way or the other. Sadly, they don't encourage
because the relationship in the heat of the teen moment is like, what about that doll I carried around?
I recall that doll. Anyway, before we begin, I thought I would just check in. Maybe you don't, but do either of you have strong feelings about RCTs in policy settings? Are there any hot takes you want to share up front, or worries or concerns that we might look out for as we go through this mad story?
No, I come at it from only ever really knowing about them in relation to drugs and health policy, right? Like, that's my background in RCT. When I say background, no one ever put me in charge of anything like that. But in order to make the arguments that I've wanted to make over the years, my experience with them. And so I have very little in social policy and other types of policy, like even an understanding of how and what.
Yeah.
I guess, Lloydie? Similarly to Danielle, knowledge light, that's never stopped me from having an opinion before, though. And so I guess in a social policy context, I'm always curious, just as in a medical context, for how you can control all the potentially relevant factors. But let's see.
The human condition, I mean, even in the, again, probably slightly more than ignorant in relation to particularly pharmaceutical ones. I spent a long time in spaces of like that, and even that when it tries to control for human behaviour, and that's much easier in some ways to control for human behaviour in a pharmacological sense. But it's always been fascinating to me that even though it's really hard to do there, how you can do that in other forms of social policy kind of boggles me. So go on, tell me how the badgers fit in.
Look, and as we begin, I want to shout out to Angela Cassidy, who has written a brilliant book on badgers and cows in the UK. And I know you're thinking, gee, that sounds like a boring book. It's actually a cracking read, and it's called Vermin, Victims and Disease, and we'll link to it in the show notes. And then my final little bit of pre-warming. Do you guys know what a badger is? Because, I thought
like an English wombat? That's where I was going.
I've got to confess my knowledge here is very wind in the willows based.
Me too.
You just better know. I was thinking of a skunk, I think, and then I saw a little YouTube of a badger. I'm like, oh, they're really cute.
Badgers are black and white like skunks, though, right? Yeah, I can see how you got there.
Yeah, I've got wind in the willows and an English wombat. That's where I get to.
Exactly the right, you literally have exactly what you need. So they are, and this is the quote I got from Angela Cassidy, they're grumpy and elusive creatures that live in large, quite structured family groups, defending well-defined territories over large periods of time. And they do have a peculiarly kind of Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, Mr. Toad kind of vibe in the English consciousness.
Well, we may need to edit this out, but it reminds me of a certain kind of cohort of particular type of long-serving public servant and senior executive. Grumpy, elusive creature defending well-defined territories. I was like, we still talking about badgers, or are we in the public service already?
We're at math already. It's so true. That's brilliant. But like wombats, they have an ambivalent relationship, like the way farmers hate wombats and try to kill them. There's a thing there too. Anyway, okay, our story begins in 1971. That's a long time ago, when a MAF vet finds a dead badger in Gloucestershire with tuberculosis in its lungs, and it's the particular TB that infects cattle. And even at this time, they know it can be spread to other mammals, including badgers, deer, and occasionally humans, but no one kind of thinks there's much of it in the badgers or the deer, and we've solved the human problem by pasteurising milk. So that's for you raw milk listeners out there. That's one of the reasons why you shouldn't do that. Anyway, within 4 years, so this is 1971, within 4 years, government's gone from we found a dead badger to a national culling policy to protect the cattle herd. And that's because the MAF vets have this kind of way of thinking about pandemics or epidemics or whatever you call them in herds, which is you find the thing that's got it, you cull the reservoir, and then that gets rid of it. The challenge they have is it's really easy to kill cows on scale, right? Because you pick them up, you knock them on the head, and you do whatever.
We fence them and tag them, and we know where they are.
Exactly. Our badger friends are living in underground sets that are quite deep and challenging to get to. So, for example, they try to gas them by pumping sodium cyanide directly into the sets, and they discover, although it takes them 5 years to do so, that actually while this kills a lot of them, you then get these deranged and partially dead badgers wandering the countryside. So they stop
badgers.
Jesus.
Anyway, it's terrible.
Wind in the willows gone wrong.
It's terrible.
Wind in the willows after Mr. Toad's party.
It's exactly right, drunk badgers. So they have to stop. They can't kind of work out how to do it both efficiently and humanely. And so in the 80s and the 90s and the early 90s, there's a lot of work trying to work out how do we get rid of these badgers. So MAF, our friends MAF, the Ministry for Agriculture, and whatever else is on the end of that, shift to doing. They start
forestry
killing
and
badgers.
fisheries usually.
Thank you. I think that's right. Or it might be farming and
anyway, be. Yeah.
They do cage trapping and then shooting. So and they do that themselves rather than letting farmers do it. So that's a big change in practice. So only MAF people can go and trap them and then they shoot them. And they shift from moving from kind of getting rid of all the badgers in an area to just doing a kind of more targeted reactive culling in response to specific outbreaks. And look, partly that's just because it's really expensive. It's much easier to throw a gas canister down a set than it is to trap them and then shoot them. But partly it's also because this thing called the Badger Act of 1973 has...
What a delightful piece of highly specific legislation. Come at me. Badger Act, sorry.
So good. And one of the things it does is it means that if you want to kill a badger, it's sort of like our Native Veg Act or our Native Birds Act. You now need a specific license and a justification to kill the badger. And in fact, the Badger Act is drafted so broadly that various activists take the minister to court, saying that even the limited culling he's doing is too much. So anyway, so that's where we are in the early 90s.
Which is, of course, smack bang in the middle of, oh God, you're going to make me say it again, bovine...
Spongiform
encephalitis. Mad cow. So who are the key players in the lead up to deciding to do this kind of gold standard trial?
Yeah, look, so by the mid-90s, if you think we started this story in 1971, we've had 25 years for grievances and positions and different ways of understanding badgers to be in the world. So let me introduce you to some of our characters. We've got the math vets who we've met, and they love a bit of stamping out. That's their kind of way of dealing with an outbreak. So they're very interested in identifying and slaughtering badgers. They're also a bit interested actually in testing for this bovine tuberculosis as well, because that's part of their thing. Then
and
you've got
primary interest here is the cattle, right? And the people that farm the cattle, not badgers.
Exactly. So their absolute priority is protecting the cattle. And they sit alongside, but uneasily and separated inside MAF, the pest control scientists, who are the ones who deal with those, and I've worked in this area in environment who deal with the complaints of farmers saying there's too many badgers, there's too many wombats, there's too many galahs, there's too many fur seals was one that we had. And so these pest control scientists have what one would call a kind of skeptical framing towards complaints about pests, because they've heard it all before and they're always a bit like, yeah, the farmers say it's the badgers, but actually it's that they've got dodgy hygiene. But also because they're kind of ecologists, they have a more complex view of the world. They sort of don't think you can just stamp things out. So they're skeptical about culling solving everything, but they don't mind killing an animal. It's to be clear, and as I discovered in environment to my shock and horror, they love killing a native animal when there's too many of them.
It was also a shock to me. An environment.
It really was.
Here I was being like, well, they know that I'm not a huge fan of dogs and cats. They're fine, but I'm not a lover. Yeah. And it's like, oh no, I'm going to learn a whole heap I didn't know before.
Yeah.
Speaking of wombats.
Yeah, I was going to say I might even find the little image with the cute wombat with the red target on its head telling how to kill it, which is the thing I took most from that department. Anyway, so that's inside government. And then outside government, you have the badger protection movement, who are the kind of your wildlife conservation people, because it's England, there's a lot of conservatives in that. There's a lot of Tory ladies who are kind of super into it. They're a bit mad, to be honest. They do documentaries, they run wildlife sanctuaries, they do stories in the local press about how misunderstood badgers are. They're the ones who expose this question of kind of the demented badgers who escape the underground gassing. They're kind of those people. And then, of course, there's the farmers who are represented by the National Farmers Union, and they watch kind of this tuberculosis return to their cleared herds, and they are convinced that it's coming from the badgers and they just want to kill them. So into this kind of context, we have the BSE catastrophe, which really damages the credibility of MAF in terms of its ability to kind of manage all these stakeholders. And our friend John Gummer, the agriculture minister and father of Cordelia, who would not eat the beef burger.
Refused to eat the burger.
Oh, he's back. He's back. We've got Mr. Gummer. Minister Gummer is back. And he, in 1996, is just really annoyed to learn that they've been investing all this money in badger TB vaccine and testing and nothing's happening. But there's this increasing number of cases of TB in cows. And so he commissions the Krebs Review to review the scientific evidence and make recommendations for what to do next. So should they do culling? Should they do vaccination and testing? And so the Krebs Review comes together and sort of looks over
Are we sure the badgers are giving the cows TB and not the other way around? How do we know this?
Well, you would fit in well with our mad badger activists, because they definitely don't believe that the badgers are giving the cows TB. They think the cows are giving the badgers TB.
Great. Good to know where I'm aligned.
The MAF pest control people think that it's probably badger to cows, just because it's so much easier to kind of cull the cows, right? So remember, they are in fact doing quite rigorous. When the cows get TB, they go and kill all the cows with it. So there is some ingress happening here. But agreed, The badger people think in some cases that the badgers should be protected from the cows. Anyway, so at this, Krebs and his team review all the stuff and they conclude that MAF does have evidence for a badger cattle transmission link, but that evidence is indirect and that the patchwork of kind of culling policies tried over 20 years is so varied in scale, geography and method that you actually can't draw any conclusions from whether any of it is working in controlling. So the answer, they say, is let's set up a proper experiment. And they explicitly model it on the randomised control trial drug trial standard. And they say, look, let's set up 10 sets of 3 matched sites across the southwest of England. One will be a no badger cull site, one will be a reactive badger cull site, and one will be a proactive badger cull site. And let's see what happens over what they think will be 5 years, but what turns out to be more like 10. And they hand the report to Labor's new minister, Jack Cunningham, in 1997. And, of course, Labor are like, oh, we love evidence, we love science, and we particularly love avoiding a controversy at a point in time. So we're going to suspend culling while we wait for the trial. They establish an independent scientific group, give it some money, and off they go.
So interesting. So
independent? Like, so when you say independent, they're not public servants? Yeah,
no, okay. They're academics running it outside, which becomes important later.
Oh, okay. So, I totally read everything and prepped, but let's assume I didn't know that. So I've got a question about that from the beginning, but anyway.
Yeah. Go. What's your question?
Not to start Fight Club in the wrong point in time, but like the approach of government and the approach of academia can obviously be reasonably different, and the relationship between the independent people and government, and I don't mean relationship inappropriately by way of like get us the evidence to prove my point or anything like that, but just like, do you have everything you need, like to the academics? Like, here I am in government, I have access to lots of things, levers, information, mailing lists, like all sorts of crap I've got because I'm in government. The setup of that relationship is really, really, really important, because I don't think most public servants understand the academic world very well. I have been in a little bit of a crash course in the last 2 years and getting the kind of late 90s uni twitchy eye of like, what? And so I just like, if they did it independently, I just think how they went about that from the beginning is an important thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because it is so politically expedient at this point for them to be able to say, who knows, not us. We'll ask some people to work it out, and until then, leave us alone. Like classic kick the can down the road, but allowed to do so while, patting yourself on the back about how you're so evidence-driven and, making policy decisions informed by science. But I kind of can't get past the fact that, it is quite politically helpful to just be able to say, let's wait out a trial.
Yeah. Okay, so counter that it's also a little bit politically vulnerable because one of the problems or one of the issues is when evidence and politics kind of bang into each other, right? And the kind of obvious answer that I think is wrong, but is the first thing people think of is like, well, if we know what's right, we'll do what's right. And I'm like, yeah, right. That's not actually how it works. And even pre-COVID and wild internet, just because a scientist said so didn't mean we were all up for it, firstly. And so I think there's something quite vulnerable about government saying, I don't know, but we're going to try 3 different things. Like, I go back to the can government experiment idea, Caroline, and you're like not on kids is often mine, and we've got different views on that. So I agree. I don't disagree with what you're saying, Alison, which is, oh shit, we're stumped. Quick, let's kick this can down the road, put it in a project, and hopefully I won't be the minister when the evidence comes back and I have to deal with it. But I also think there is and
hope I don't have actually a view about what looks like here, because now that I've said I'll be led by the evidence, I'm going to have to be led by the evidence. All of that
stuff. But I do think there's something vulnerable about saying I am the government, and with all the information and everything I have, I actually don't know what works. I think there's something interestingly vulnerable about that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think one of the things that made me reflect on, Alison, just as you said, like if you don't have a view, and I do think that is what is kind of generally enables this for Labor, because like they're agnostic. They don't care about the countryside. They don't care about Tory ladies who want to preserve badgers. They don't really care about farmers. And at this point, they're not particularly beholden to the Greens. So there's they do have this kind of like no dog in this fight, happy to let the experts sort it out. Whereas at exactly the same time, they are like chastising the previous government for waiting on the science for BSE. So like it is really interesting to sort of see like where are you in a space that you might be open to that.
Which is the idea that I was saying before, which is when evidence and politics meet, and the idea that if we knew what was right, we'd just do it. I'm like, sure, maybe, but maybe not.
And as someone who spent some time with some regional and primary industry stakeholders, I'm curious about how this would have been received as what do you mean you don't know? We frickin' know. Like we're the ones out here looking at it every day. I think while the government might not have a firm and fixed opinion, a number of stakeholders clearly do. And so how
stakeholders always have a firm and fixed opinion.
But how well you're able to bring the stakeholders on the journey that you might have to do some experimentation and test some of their core beliefs and assumptions about what's causing the problem and how it could be solved can be challenging.
I mean, really, like the farmers, I think, feel this as delay and gaslighting, right? They feel this as like, we know the answer is so obvious. And, actually, this is making me think we were involved in this, Danielle. I can't remember if you were in the Environment Department when we had the fur seals issue, but there was a resurgence of fur seals eating fishery stock in the kind of in the Coorong and along near the coast, and the fishers were like, we should just shoot the fur seals, and our pest control people were like, that's not going to solve your problem. And thus ensued quite a kind of tricky negotiation of, can you use crackers to scare them off? Can you blah, blah, blah? And I remember really explicitly hearing our fearless Chief Executive, Sandy Pitcher, long-time listener, first-time caller, and she was on the radio, and I remember someone calling up and saying people are seriously mentally unwell because of the impact of these fur seals on their fishing stocks. What are you going to do about it, right? Like it is this really concrete moment where government doesn't know what will work. It suspects the thing that's being offered won't work, and there are good reasons not to go. But it's like people's real lives, and they are really upset about it.
Yeah. So talk us through the actual experiment, Caroline. What happens in this randomised control trial?
Okay, so the plan is to do 30 sites across the southwest in these 10 matched triplets. As I say, proactive badger culling, reactive badger culling, and no badger culling at all. So kind of 3 overlapping circles. Imagine it like that. The independent science group under John Bourne gets to work translating that onto the actual landscape of the southwest. And of course, once they start surveying, landowner consent becomes a challenge. We have all of these, exactly to your point, Alison, questions around we're working out, will people agree? And so it takes them 3 years just to survey all the 10 triplet areas, and they've actually started culling in 7 of them before they've even finished surveying the last 3. So it's really challenging. There are also some design compromises along the way. So Krebs, our reviewer, had emphasised the need to remove all badgers in culling areas, including repeat culls, to prevent recolonisation. You can only really test it if you've got rid of all of the ones in your proactive and reactive cull. But of course, we're still not willing to gas them. And so we're doing the cage trapping and shooting using MAF people, and that's less effective. So they're not convinced they are, in fact, getting all the badgers. And then they also, and I'll never understand this is such an environment thing, they won't kill them during the badger breeding season because I guess they're worried about baby badgers. I'm like, if you're going to kill them anyway. But anyway, they won't kill them during badger breeding season. So I know Daddy was like, you are a heartless wench, but whatever.
There are moments where I love having you around because I think I'm the least motherly person on the face of the earth, and you're like, fuck
all
it.
About the death of the baby badgers. So, and then in addition to these kind of design compromises, there are activists who go out into the countryside, they destroy the cage traps, they release the trapped badgers, they damage the equipment, they make threats against the ISG members and MAF officers and ministers. And like, there's this beautiful term they use. They talk about interference, but it's like essentially a sabotage campaign against the whole trial.
Which doesn't happen in medical randomised control trials, just saying.
That is true.
Well, everybody is a volunteer. So, like, the badgers weren't signing consent forms, is all I'll say.
Definitely not signing consent forms. So this is just at the start. And then, so this starts in 97. Then in February 2001, we have foot and mouth disease. And the countryside essentially stops. So there are movement controls, quarantine zones, the mass slaughter of 10 million animals. So, like, it's a huge deal. Most of MAF's animal health officers and scientists are seconded to the foot and mouth response. So they halt the routine testing of TB for half a year, like that, for a year. So, you know, there's all of this stuff happening, right? That interrupts this, what started as a very thoughtful, simple design is like hit reality with a gusto. And what is government during all of this time? Like, essentially waiting. They've suspended the culling, and their policy during the trial period is best summarised as, we won't do anything until we have an answer. Come October 2003, which is 6 years after they've kind of first thought of this.
Like, sorry, can we just pause there? How long are terms in UK?
Fixed 5 years, right?
Five.
Okay. Not fixed.
So you can get around with, like, okay, because I was like, are we 2 terms into that's a long trial by Australian standards.
Long trial. Even by UK standards.
Oh,
it is a long trial. So 97 is the first year of the Blair government. So you think about it in that way. So we get to October 2003 and the ISG start to look at some of their interim findings, and it's shocking. So it turns out the reactive culling, the kind of killing badgers in an area when BTB has shown up in the cows, which is definitely, I think, what you would think would be the thing to do, makes things worse. They have a 27% increase in bovine tuberculosis in herds in that area, what they call herd breakdowns, in those reactively culled areas, and that's consistent across all of the triplets, or 9 of the 10 triplets. And so the ISG, the Independent Science Group, go to ministers and they're like, "Look, turns out this one isn't doing so well, but let's just finish data collection for the season and then we'll stop reactive culling." But the ministers are like, we don't think we can sit on a piece of information that suggests that that if we do this, it makes things worse. So we're just going to stop you doing the reactive culling. And so now we are just in the place where we have only proactive badger culling and nothing. And we're going to have a couple more years before we get the final results of that. But I thought we might just pause here at this kind of slightly wacky moment.
So I guess we started out with something that tried to produce a certainty of answers. If A, then B.
Yeah.
If C, then D.
Yeah.
But the conditions keep re-emerging, the conditions being the tuberculosis in badgers and in cattle. And I guess this goes to some of my concern about the difference between a randomised control trial in a pharmaceutical setting and here, like just how many things there are that you can't manage and control in this trial. What are your thoughts?
So the other thing that's changing is the external environment, which is what is so tricky about any of this type of work in government, which is we are always responsible for the whole community and everything. So a good one with RCTs is how much time was lost during COVID. Not just because, you lock down and can't go and access things and whatever else, but partly because they couldn't control for what we didn't know about COVID, and so they couldn't control for that bit. And so things that are unrelated, like these other outbreaks and presumably changes of bureaucrats, also like all sorts of things change in the external environment. So it's very hard in government to do a hard stop and start on almost anything. Right?
Yeah.
Because there's always a furry bit at the edges, and then on top of that, in between, stuff changes. And so that's, I think, one of the challenges that they perhaps didn't account for, but also that's that thing about how you set this up at the beginning, and where I imagine the academics are like, well, what does it matter from a scientific perspective? I don't care if there's an outbreak of such and such over there or whatever.
It's all data.
And it's like, right? Whereas I can imagine governments going, well, I do. So, hello.
Turns out that's important to me.
So would you, as the decision makers, have stopped that middle category of reactive culling, knowing that the early evidence is that it's making things worse?
I'd be really bored by now. I mean, there are some issues I've had boots in for more than 30 years on, so maybe that's not true. Maybe if I was passionate about it, I wouldn't be bored by now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this would be one of the ones I could stay interested in for 3.5 decades, but I mean, this is also that thing about ministers, like the ISG telling the ministers, like, you need a certain amount. So that what you've got is the politics and the science kind of parts of it, and probably decision makers who are like, oh God, I don't know what the right answer is from kind of either perspective, I think.
I mean, I guess like at this stage, my knowledge of the randomised control trial is strictly limited to things you've said in this episode. But I just don't think you can sustain an experiment where it's demonstrably making the condition you're trying to resolve worse, especially when even conducting the experiment is putting some of those stakeholders, the farmers, the cattle owners, offside. I think once you can, with sufficient confidence, say, well, that's not the option. Not only is it not the option, it's actively making things worse. I think you have to stop. I think it's your duty to creation of public value.
Yeah, and it's like it gives, and we'll get into this, I think not stopping makes it act as though the science is more important than the outcomes. And I just kind of think, like, we've all heard the ways in which the science has already been compromised. And it doesn't mean we're not going to get something useful out of it, but we were never going to get the perfect thing out of it. So, like, maybe let's just crack on.
So speaking of crack on.
Oh, and the other one, crack on, but also just the first thing I thought of then was also the interim, like, we need more interim data, and like I can't imagine any of my ministers wouldn't have set me on fire by this point, quite frankly, that I didn't have something better than this to say about what works and what doesn't. And this whole wait till the end thing. I mean, these must be some very, very patient ministers is all I've got to say.
Yeah, I'm so pleased you haven't read ahead, because you are literally at some point going to be asked to read out from a fed-up minister who is going to just perfectly capture. No, but like I love how much
really
you have totally
poorly prepared
channeled.
today.
No, it's like you have really captured the vibe of the ministers who are like 10 years in, like, yeah, fucking
seriously, guys.
Okay. All right, so the final report lands on the 18th of June 2007, and it finds...
Which is how many years after it started?
Like
11?
10 years,
10?
literally 10 years. Yeah.
Right.
Like the Krebs Review recommended it in 96, so we are 11 years from the recommendation. You're right. Minister Gummer first considered this in 96.
Wow.
Right. And it finds, drumroll, badgers are clearly a source of TB in cattle. So that's useful.
Glad we tested that.
It also, as we have talked about, finds that reactive badger culling is bad. It finds that proactive badger culling decreases the rate of TB in cows by 19% inside the cull zones, but, drum roll, increases it by 29% in surrounding areas. I know, I wish we had, this is when we need video because Danielle's eyes were just excellent. And the report makes sense of this kind of seemingly counterintuitive and slightly mad finding. And in fact, draw on our badger activists who had said this would happen right at the beginning. So it goes to show you should always listen to the slightly emotional but actually very insightful naturalists. It's something called perturbation.
They were perturbed.
They ran away, right? So, like their badger friend in the one next door said, "Oi, the cops are here.
Shit's getting real.
Shit's getting real. It's time to hightail it out of here." They seem to have guns and cages, right?
Turns out badgers aren't stupid and
not
don't
as slow
wait
as they look.
Don't wait for their fate. They play dirty and they leave. And so you displace these badgers. And of course, because they're like stressed, because they, as I told you up front carefully, they live in large and well-defended territories. They're really stressed by not living in their well-defended territory anymore. So they're like sicker, right? So they carry their sick illness with them to the neighbouring badgers. The ISG also finds, in addition to this thing, which is like it makes it worse, they also find that weaknesses in the cattle testing regime mean that the cattle themselves are contributing heaps more to the disease spread than the badgers ever could. So interesting. As you do. I know.
Kissing cows.
Well, because of course we're in a period of changing farming practices, and so as you recall with our BSE conversation, we talked about how industrial farming changes how cows respond to illness, blah blah blah. Anyway, to your point, Danielle, earlier, where you're like, why are we letting these scientists make public policy? Do they have access to all the right information? Our ISG didn't just look at what happened to bovine tuberculosis. They also do a cost-benefit analysis of culling. So they actually say, right, well, this is how much it costs to kill a badger, and this is how effective we think it is. And they look at it all and they conclude that badger culling is simply too expensive and risky to be economically or practically viable, because they assume that you've got to keep doing this cage trapping, shooting them thing. Now, here we are on to, Danielle, you are so good. You really spotted this. So in the lead up to the report's release, the relationship between the ISG and DEFRA, which is what MAF has now become, has been deteriorating. So since their early response in 2000, you don't say. Can you imagine these public servants are just like, you are so annoying. Yeah. So the ISG, for example, sends DEFRA a near final draft of the report in May 2007, and DEFRA said almost no comments back. They're just in passive aggressive stonewalling, we are not interested in your shit. And it's discovered through FOI later that literally weeks before publication, they're still sending up briefings to Tony Blair saying things like, we're going to be reintroducing culling when this trial finally ends. And Tony Blair is signing off and saying, yeah. So there is a real sense that the ministers and the department are completely fed up with the trial. And Danielle, I thought you might like to read out the following quote from our DEFRA minister who had overseen much of this, Jeff Rooker. Do you want to be Jeff for a moment?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't do accents or anything, but I have gone back and looked at what we were told trials would deliver 10 years ago, that we would find out the extent of TB in the badger population, how badgers transmit TB to cattle, that we might have a vaccine, and that we would have all the answers. Well, frankly, we haven't, have we? The fact that they can't tell us how TB is spread from badgers to cattle other than that it's respiratory is not a lot of bloody help to us.
I love this so much.
Fair play, Jeff.
I know, right? Calling it like he sees it. And so another way you can tell that they're not happy is that the Secretary of State for DEFRA, David Miliband, reads the report, and as he reads it, he contacts the Chief Scientific Officer in the UK, Sir David King, and asks him instead for a short objective assessment of the key scientific issues, which do not extend to economic or other practical issues, because he's like, I just wanted the bloody science and you've given me this stupid cost-benefit analysis.
Stay in your lane.
Absolutely. So that little report, Sir David King's report, is delivered within 6 weeks. So it's a very, very thoughtful, very quick piece of work. However, this 6 weeks, and the reason why I was so specific about the date that the report landed is kind of interesting from Alison's question before about how long the government is, because report delivered on the 18th of June 2007, on the 27th of June 2007, Tony Blair sets aside for Gordon Brown. So we have a change in Prime Minister, and also we have a huge change in the ministry. So we go from Jeff Rooker and David Miliband, who are bloody sick of these badger trial people, to DEFRA Minister Hilary Benn, that's a man by the way, just FYI, who becomes known, for reasons that will become clear, as Veggie Ben in the tabloids. See, you guys are so mean mean to me about going down the badger cow trail, but come on, you've got to.
Yeah, it's been comedy gold.
Yeah, thank you.
And I thought it might be a man. My great grandfather was a Hillary.
A Hillary. I like Hillary. Yeah, I know, but anyway. So the King report is delivered in August 2007 to Veggie Ben, and the King report finds that culling high incidence areas is, drumroll, the best option available at the moment to reduce the reservoir of infection in wildlife. So literally the opposite recommendation from the ISG, right, despite using exactly the same data.
So how did he arrive at an entirely opposite conclusion on the same data?
Yeah. So he has convened a new panel with a mammal ecologist and an immunologist and 3 vet scientists. So none of those are kind of population epidemiology modelers. And he frames the task really narrowly. The job is we are modelling the effect of badger removal on BTB in cattle using the proactive cull data. And they're not weighing that against other policy options. They're not weighing how reasonable it is to assume that you can get rid of all of the badgers in that area. They're not assuming that you're kind of stuck with this cage, then shoot them kind of thing. They're just if you got rid of this many badgers in this area, what would it do? And they project forwards rather than look backwards, right? So they're if we did it here, what would happen going forwards? You would get fewer and fewer cases. So you can kind of see how the same data leads you to different conclusions depending on what you bracket in and out of your...
Yep.
Yeah. So despite the King report's recommendations, in July 2008, Veggie Ben earns his name by announcing that he won't resume culling, even though he's just received a report that says he can resume culling, primarily on the ISG's advice, and instead is going to invest in vaccination as a long-term solution. And so badger advocates are, of course, delighted, and farming groups are, of course, furious. But what is most important is everyone now has evidence for their particular point of view and a reason why their opponent is wrong. So you've really got us into an even more stuck part of the conversation.
Because people can complain about what was included and what was excluded and how the trial was conducted and whatever position they want to take, there's evidence to support their position.
Evidence everywhere as far as the eye can see. But of course, Veggie Ben doesn't stick around for long because there's the May 2010 election and we get the coalition government, the Tories and the Libs, who come in, and they reverse the position. We'll do this quite quickly, but it's just it's kind of wild. So instead of killing badgers themselves, they issue licenses to farmers to cull badgers. They just use free shooting.
Did seem like. Yeah,
overkill.
Okay. Yeah, you could do it.
I was wondering when we'd just give the farmers back the thing.
Yeah, so they have just given it back with a licence. They start in 2 pilot sites, Somerset and Gloucestershire, and eventually expand it out to 22 counties. But because they're still not far from the kind of previous controversy, they commissioned 2 new expert groups.
Is that really what we're going to do at this point in time? Okay.
We won't talk about the first one. It's the natural science evidence base. It's fine. It sort of lands where King's one says, it's fine. But the other one, the independent expert panel, they've all got independent in their name, is assessing this question of whether free shooting is safe, effective and humane. Because remember, we couldn't kill the badgers with the gas. The cage was too slow, blah, blah, blah. And so seemingly inevitably in this story, the independent expert panel does not give the government the answer it has been looking for. It finds that the pilot culls have been safe in terms of public risk, no humans have been killed. That's pretty helpful. Not effective. They haven't killed enough badgers because it turns out they're grumpy and reclusive and don't come out very much. And so
just having farmers pop them off from time to time isn't
not the thing.
Quite the population level control you need.
Yeah. Not humane. Apparently, we're not good at shooting them, so there's a lot of damaged, half-dead badgers wandering the countryside causing distraction. So the independent expert panel's report is published, but everyone just ignores it. DEFRA moves on. It's yep, inhumane, but we're still going to continue issuing licenses. And I think it's fair to say that this issuing of licenses just kind of becomes the default setting, even though there's kind of backwards and forwards about all of this stuff. So by 2024, so remember they start issuing these licenses back in 2010. So in 14 years, 250,000 badgers have been killed by farmers. 250,000 badgers, equivalent to over half the last of the estimated badger population. It is the largest culling program in British history. It's operating across 22 counties. It is just huge. And bovine tuberculosis just continues to get more and more prevalent. So it's increasingly, it's just so controversial that even now, so then the Tories kind of say, well, we sort of recognise it's not working, so we're going to stop issuing these intensive culling licences in 22. But actually, we're just going to roll everyone who's on one over so they can keep doing it. You just get this sense of kind of managed kind of unease. Labor's 2024 manifesto calls the badger cull ineffective and pledges to end it. And so finally, as of this year, they have ended the licences. The badger slaughter is over, and the Labor government is investing in what he calls a holistic package, which is always a word that makes me kind of think, incorporating vaccination, improved cattle testing and biosecurity. And as of March 2025, the amount of TB in cattle kind of is about the same as it was before when we were killing thousands and thousands of badgers. So that brings us up to date.
Well, all in all, that was a bit of a bust, really, wasn't it? 49 million pounds, decades, to end up with a TB rate in cows that's about the same. And a lot of people who got pissed along the way. So go for it, Danielle. Fire.
Narrow versus wide from the very beginning. Once they start narrowing it down, at least they get policy positions, whether they're correct or not, but I'm not sure it would have made any difference anyway. Yeah. But I also just wonder about what the role of unis and the academic parties. So should government be going, I know it wasn't supposed to take 10 years.
No.
But presuming that these universities have, I don't know, badger departments or agriculture departments or whatever. I'm so good in the country. It's the kind of longitudinal big question that I'd expect them to do on their own that I'm not sure is the role of government all the time to do. I think it is if there was a burning platform reason to do it and academia was doing it, I think it's a different question for government to say, could we give you some money to get time-sensitive data that we can have a look at to make some policy decisions for next year?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it was ever the free-wielding, long, big questions. The setup of it was always designed to kind of meander wildly because the impetus of a university is just not the same as the impetus and the authorisation of a government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny, in my day job, I actually have one of these in my portfolio. There's an evaluation of 3-year-old kinder rollout in Victoria that began in 2019, I want to say, and we're kind of just finalising it now. It was funded by philanthropy but sort of partnered with government. And the thing I would say is actually the academics have been the best keepers of the purpose of the thing, and government has been much more interested in kind of it's just has moved on, right? 3-year-old kinder is no longer the particularly interesting question for government. So academia has been a good place for it. But events, dear boy, events, right? So EDGE rollout was really interrupted by COVID. And I just think in this polycrisis world, the idea that you can set something and find it out 5 years later is wildly misplaced, but also doesn't mean it's not helpful. But I think the thing you said then, just Danielle, that just really struck me is the kind of it's good and helpful, but it shouldn't be the thing. It shouldn't be government's mechanism for making a decision.
It's the mechanism. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. And I think unis could use a bit of over here, go look at that over for 10 years and we'll keep talking to you and asking for chunks of it and paying for bits of it.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that the motivations are aligned and therefore I'm not sure it was the right setup from the beginning.
And I guess two reflections on this. The first is, as problematic as it was, I think we did learn something. which is that probably more of it is to do with how the cows are interacting with each other than how the badgers are interacting with the cows. Was that worth? But similarly, one of the things that I always enjoyed, and this is fabulous New Yorker article from actually decades ago that I'll see if I can dig out for the show notes, about randomised controlled trials in a pharmaceutical sense, is they demonstrate how effective placebos are.
Yes.
Like all of them. Every time. And so... and yet we spend no time or energy as a health system on why it is that placebos are effective. We just kind of take that whole data set, carve off a chunk of it and say, yep, don't worry about that. Let's focus in on the controlled group for whom this pharmaceutical intervention was effective or not. And so it's a bit like, I guess the similarity here for me is that showing you something, and it might not be the thing you set out to find out, and I'm not sure we design it in a way that makes it easy for us to take on those additional bits of data or learning so much as say, well, it didn't answer the specific question I wanted next.
Yeah, I was thinking about it from a Australia Centre for Evaluation question. Like if you're government and you've spent the £49 million, you're dark, right? Like you're like, I evaluated this policy option and like to our friends, I don't even bloody know how it gets from the badgers to the cows. Is it respiratory or whatever? But then I think, has it progressed our ability to sense make where we are in the world? Does it stop us from doing things that don't work? Yes, it does, right? Like it actually is actively helpful at so even the farmers, even though they still want to keep killing the badgers, actually they all got a bit more behind vaccination and thing as well. So it stops us from overly investing in stupid and opens up different opportunities for, I think that's why I wanted to do this, because for me the takeaway is evidence is really important. Almost never is it going to tell you things in the form you expected to find it out. Almost always the most interesting things you will find out are going to be things you didn't even realise were questions you had.
Yes.
And that is brilliant. I like that.
Any final thoughts from you, Danielle?
No, I mean, I think the problem there is expectation management, right? Like the things you will find out will be interesting. It will be that families don't operate the way you think they do, or that badgers run away from people with guns, and that might be helpful for framing up your next question and your next problem. But that's about managing the expectation of how much this can deliver for you. And Alison, they kicked the can down the road. They were like, we don't know, let's ask smart people in a very vulnerable way. But actually the other thing I think about that is you have to have more hands on the tiller than that. You can't outsource figuring out the answer to a 10-year bunch of evidence.
Yeah.
I also think some people knew some of those things. We just didn't trust them.
Yes.
Right?
It's
like
so
the badger conservationists were saying they're going to run.
And you wonder if they'd been more open to hearing that, whether they could have discovered that earlier than 6 years in. Like that's probably something you could have observed, like you could have done with a much smaller trial of like, just let's see what happens. And maybe that would have brought the farmers along the way as well. But because of course they said it in like woolly skirts and kind of, a hippy dippy way. No one listened to them.
So that's probably my final thought for today. So let's bring us in for a close. The winner of our mug today is Del Lloyd from the Australian Centre for Evaluation, who emailed us suggesting we do some episodes on evaluation and suggested we ask Eleanor Williams onto the pod. And clearly, your wish is our command. Till next time.
Just some appropriately bureaucratic disclaimers. While we've tried to be as thorough in our research as busy full-time jobs and lives allow, we definitely don't guarantee that we've got all the details right. Please feel free to email us corrections, episode suggestions or anything else at thewestminstertraditionpod@gmail.com. Thanks to Pampot Audio for our intro and outro music. Till next time.